What is your why? If you wake up and you don't want to show up to work, why do you keep showing up? Do you want to spend time with your family? Do you want to travel? Always keep the end in mind when you're challenging yourself or when you wake up with those feelings of not wanting to go to work.
On today's episode, ladies, we have Ingrid Duque. She is an immigrant from Colombia, and by the age of 30, became financially independent by owning and managing over 50 units with her husband.
What you're going to really like about this is that she was able to leverage her W-2 and build a very solid plan before quitting her job 2 years ago. And we break that down. So if you're really thinking that you cannot go another day into the office and you want to quit now because you just read Rich Dad Poor Dad, stop a little bit, listen to this episode and really listen to what Ingrid had to share about her plan and how she was able to strategically have control of her financial future.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Invest Her Show. 5 years running, right, Andressa? God, 5 years goes by very quickly, but we're absolutely committed to empowering women to live a financially free and balanced life on their own terms. We do that twice a week, right, Andressa? We do that through our community. We do that in a lot of different ways, but it all started with this amazing podcast where we get a chance to interview some just phenomenal women in the trenches doing the work. Ingrid Duque, thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you so much, Liz and Andressa, for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, excited to jump into your story. And we kind of go deep quickly. So what has been the lesson that has taken you the longest to learn on your journey of investing?
I would say actually one of the, and it's still like a work in progress pretty much, is being self-aware and realizing that one of the biggest limitations that I have are the ones that are set up in my own mind. And there's actually a book that I've read that I really, really like, and it's from Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and where he talks about that, like our only limitations are the ones that are set up in our own minds. So as I start my journey and as I work towards my real estate portfolio, I've learned that sometimes like I'm too afraid to do something, but it's not because there's like an outside force preventing me, but it's like myself, like my own mind. I'm becoming insecure. So it's like, I'm actually my biggest obstacle, and it's a work in progress. Like the more I expand my business, it's like the more I learn that I need to overcome that.
I like that a lot. But I think that, as an immigrant, we all overcame one of the hardest things ever, which is coming to a country. You came from Colombia, right?
Yes, I was born in Colombia. Yes.
Yeah, born in Colombia, and you came when with your family, and it's only immigrants understand what I'm talking about, because even though we build our home here, there is this sense of not belonging, because we belong in the world, but this sense that we really need to work even harder.
Yes,
because we know what it really takes. So going back to your journey, right, in real estate, how you were able to scale. We want to really dive into that. So give us a snapshot of where it started, how it started, and where you are at now.
So everything started back in 2014. Like again, my culture being from Colombia, it was very, and my parents, they really highlighted us going to school, getting a corporate job. Like in my culture, like that's how you can determine if you've been successful. If you have a corporate job, you show up 9 to 5, you have a salary. So we did that. Like, I was a good daughter. I went to school, I got my degree. But then I realized within the first year of my W-2 job that just because you have a degree doesn't mean that you have financial stability. Like the company can have layoffs, bankruptcy, and that's what happened for the company that I was working for. They declared bankruptcy and they laid off like 75% of my department. So at that point, I wasn't laid off, but at that point, it made me realize that I needed to have a plan B, like a backup plan. Having my education was good, but it wasn't the only solution. And I needed to work on that. So my husband and I, we sat down and we realized that real estate could be that backup plan. So we focused on real estate. We found our first property And it was pretty much sight unseen because we were living in Pennsylvania and we bought it in Atlanta, Georgia. That's where my family is settled and my husband's family is settled. So we took that risk. We invested with like all of our savings. And that's where it started pretty much. 2014, we bought our first property. It was a lot of lessons learned. We made so many mistakes. But it's all about how you see those mistakes. We saw them as lessons learned. So we learned from that. And then from there on, we decided to leverage our W-2 job as a tool. And it actually picked up. Like from 2018 to like 2023, we were able to scale our portfolio.
I really want to dissect what you just said it. And I want to highlight that. You said, let's leverage our W-2 in order to build a portfolio.
Yes.
You know how many times I hear, listen, I read this real estate book. I think, yes, I am awakened now, and I'm quitting my job next week, and I'm going to jump head first because that's the life that I want. Whoa, hold a second.
Yes.
Hold on. So first of all, you both had a W-2, and let's break that down. How, I'm sure you were anxious to like, oh gosh, I can't wait to really transition, right? But can you break it down? How were you able to leverage your W-2 and why was that important?
What was really important for us was that how we could become bankable to a loan, pretty much like banks or lenders. So we quickly realized that if I were to quit my job or my husband were to quit like his
not
job,
too bankable.
We're not bankable. I mean, we would be, I was dreading, honestly. Like I was waking up in the morning. I didn't want to go to work. It's that feeling that people get when they talk to you about wanting to quit. But then it's all about the perspective and the mindset that you have. So instead of waking up and being like, oh, goodness, I don't want to go to work. It's more like, oh, I'm going to use them. I'm going to use my employer in order to become more bankable and in order to raise my salary. So what we did, we went with that mentality knowing, hey, we need to sacrifice and hustle and work really hard right now in order for us to have the life we want 2-3 years from now. So realizing that of saying, hey, I'm actually investing in my own future by staying in this job and switching that mentality instead of me saying, I hate my job, this sucks, I don't want to go to work. It's more like, actually, no, this is a tool that I have. I'm going to go ahead and use this tool in order to get financial freedom in the future.
Love that, Ingrid. I mean, being bankable is so critical as we're talking about. So let's dissect this because again, this is a strategy I think a lot more people need to do versus just go quit your job, cavalier, figure it out. So what did that plan look like for you and your husband? Like walk us through specifically the length of the plan and the process.
So as I had mentioned before, like we wanted to use our employer or the company that we were working for as a tool. Now, our plan was going to be long-term. Like with real estate, there's no such thing as get quick, rich quick, none of that. We had like a long-term plan. So our first plan was, okay, so how can we use our employer? And one of those things was like, they were providing opportunities for development, like education. So we purposely found an employer that paid for our master's. So that was key for us. Is like, we don't want to get into debt. We don't want to get a student loan. So we got an employer and that meant that we had to move. So for us, we were with the same vision of like, we're going to take a risk. We're going to move to this new employer because they're going to pay for our education. So what happens is that we went to school and we got our master's. Why? Because in our industry, if you have a master's, you can make 25% more in income. Exactly. So we did that. We did that. We sacrificed moving like from Georgia to like Pennsylvania. And in addition to that, we have a background in engineering. So our employer also paid for our licenses. It was all done strategically. Our licenses would increase our income for an additional 10%. So we're talking about remaining bankable, but also how can we increase that limit of being
like maximize your W-2.
Exactly. Like maximizing it. You have a tool. Find out, can they help me do a certificate? Can they help me do this in order for me to make more money? So that was like kind of like plan A is like first step, we're going to find a company. we understand the risk that we're going to have to move, and we were aligned on that. We agreed that if we want to have this goal, we need to make sacrifices. So we moved, got our master's, got our license. And after that, it was more of like, okay, so now we have all of this like certificates and degrees. We need to find out if we can get another job. Now, when you're in corporate America, a promotion can be 3% every year. That barely keeps up with inflation nowadays.
Wow, 3%, right? Oh, got promoted, 3%.
No, yeah, and it's like you go to your review and they're like, "Oh, Ingrid, congratulations, you got 3%," and I'm like,
"Oh God,
isn't inflation like 7?" I'm like, "What's your money?" So we realized that. So like our second step was, okay, we got first step taken care of. Our second step is like, how can we still increase our income? And that meant we needed to relocate. So we relocated to different states. We went to Kentucky, we went to South Carolina, we went to Georgia, Pennsylvania, and all of that. We understand that every family is different, but for us, we understood that that meant that we needed to pick up and go to another location for a year in order to increase our income, because our company was giving us 3%, like I mentioned. When you relocate and pick up and go to another company, you're going to get a 15, 20% pay bump. And that increases your bankability.
I love that. So here's what I'm thinking about. So you got the master's is not like an easy feat. It's not like I'm going to get my master's in the next 24 hours, right? That's and then both of you are doing that. So walk me through the time frame. You're both getting your master's, then you move again. How long did that take? Were you investing along the way while that was happening? Or is that like the first thing you did? And then you said, okay, let's pick up the investing.
So the first thing we did is we bought our first property. We decided, this is really good, but we don't have money. We paid this property cash. So how can we increase our bankability and our savings?
Then the master's came.
Master's came. That took us 2 years because we were working full time. Okay. So during that 2-year frame, we got our license as engineers, and then we got our master's. So it was kind of like, we weren't working on like real estate, but we were hustling to go to school after work at night.
To increase that income.
Okay. After that 2-year frame, we relocated to another company that had increased our salary by 25%. So now it's like, okay, great. Now we have all of this. We were able to save up money. And at that point, that's when we realized, okay, we have more money. We're more bankable. We are making more. Let's go ahead and pick up the real estate investing.
You know what? I'm going to say something here.
That you've never said before?
Depending where you live, you're not going to like it, what I'm going to say, but it's okay. I'm going to say it anyway, right? So I think that, again, for immigrants, what Ingrid is sharing here, the relocation, it's easy peasy. We are okay moving from one state to the other.
True.
And who cares? We are adaptable. Here's the part that, depending on where you are, you're not going to like me. But that's okay, because you guys are going to agree with what I'm saying.
Doesn't care about being liked. You want to,
So I don't give one. So anyway, PA, I live in PA. You know how many people that live in New Jersey that don't want to cross the bridge?
Yeah. I
hear on our community, oh, are you guys having Investor Con in New Jersey?
Never.
Come on, get into a flight, go to Arizona, beautiful Arizona, go to Austin next year. The locations are great. Stop it. Stop complaining about California is too expensive. Like, cut it. Stop it. I had it. I love what you're saying, Ingrid. Strategically, you guys moved for your future. Like, it's not like, oh, we have nothing else to do and we love moving. We love packing and then moving, right? I think people want the financial freedom, but they don't want to pay the price that it takes.
Yes.
And one thing that I want to say is the biggest price is the mental price. Because I bet you guys want to quit a lot of times during those 2 years, right? Pass this up. Like, what's going on over here? Forget about it. Let's go there for all the people that are in it for, oh, I'm trying to make it work with my job, but I'm about to quit. I cannot go to the office another week, right? What would you say to that person? How can he or she work with that struggle in their minds?
I would say that think of your future. And that's what we did. I sometimes I would wake up and be like, oh, I don't want to go to work. Or even like when we were going and getting our masters, we were working 50, 60 hours. And then we were doing our masters and licenses. And I would see my friends going to the lake or going traveling. And it was me and my husband and I on a Friday night studying after working a 10-hour shift, studying for 5 hours, weekends, studying 8 hours a day. And it's more like we had our goal, our end in mind. We needed to understand that in order to accomplish financial independence, it wasn't going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would be financially independent, honestly. So it's more like have that assessment in your mind of like, why am I doing this? What is your why? If you wake up and you don't want to show up to work and you just dislike your boss, what is the why? Why do you keep showing up? Do you want to spend time with your family? Do you want to travel? So always keep the end in mind when you're challenging yourself or when you wake up with those feelings of not wanting to go to work.
And the why has to be deep.
Yes, it has to be very deep. Yes.
I mean, a lot of people, I've had an exercise where if you answer the why question and if you keep asking why that, it gets to that root cause, right? Of what's really important to you. I mean, that's just amazing that you, in terms of what you've done. So, and I love this strategy. So Friday night, you and your husband, well, most people are doing other things. You're literally getting that master's degree, you're getting a certificate. So now you're more bankable. Now you have more money. What was that next purchase? And when that began your scaling?
Yes, that's where the scaling began. Because then we sat down and we're like, okay, so what's going to happen now? We did first step. The second step, let's focus in real estate. And our market is Georgia. Just our goal was to eventually come back to Georgia and be with our family, close to our family and friends. So we invested heavily in Georgia. So that's where we decided, okay, so we're bankable now. The banks like us because now we have all of this. And we started buying. It was 2018 when we kind of like pick up and started buying. And we bought like the first year, we bought 3 properties and we just started scaling. And it got to a point where we decided to partner up with other people. Because if you want to grow and go further, you got to go with other people that complement you. And that's where the scale really took off.
And what unit count did you say, okay, we're not going to use our own money. We're going to partner. And I don't know if you were using, actually, I'm assuming that expanded your ability to buy more with others, but that's my assumption.
Yes.
Is that what you did in terms of?
Yes. Like we started building like our own portfolio and I would say about 20, 25 units. We decided like, you know what, we want to go into smaller multifamilies, but now we're talking about, a higher price tag, $1-2 million. And we don't have to go at this alone. And I think it's something like what Andresa said, like as an immigrant, you want to prove yourself that you can do it yourself. And we realized we can go farther if we work with a team that can complement us. And that's where we started establishing relationships and networking, going to meetups and meeting our future partners. And that's where we grew even more.
And what was that first deal that you did with partners? What did that look like? Because that's also a very big question mark for people. Should we just recorded a mini-sode about this. Should we, go 50-50? Should we go, and depending on how active these partners are, was it a lender, and then there's a whole other litany of things. But tell us a little bit about that structure and how did you set it up and some learn lessons around that and the size of the property.
Yes. So we partner up on a 34 unit in South Carolina. So I'm actually located in Augusta, Georgia, which is kind of like really close to the border of like South Carolina. So we met our partners through networking and just discussing it. And when you find a partner, it's all about just establishing that relationship. It's not like you show up one night and you're like, hey, Andresa, let's be partners. No, you need to develop that relationship, make sure that your values...
You'll be shocked, right? I'm sure you got that, right? But you'll be shocked how many people.
Yes.
Even now it's like DM. Are you serious?
It's like you need to you need to start dating a partner. You need to make sure that, Andresa's and Liz's values are aligned with my values. Because it's not about, or maybe not partner up with with someone because they're your best friend. It doesn't mean they're the best business partner for you. So making sure that you have those values aligned. And it all started with showing up to meetups, networking, putting yourself out there, and also being self-aware of what you can bring to a partnership. So it's not all about, hey, what can you bring to me? It's a relationship. What can I bring to this partnership? How can I add value?
I'm very curious, and I'm sure all the people that are listening are curious too. You became financially independent at 30, under 30. At what point did you quit your job? We want to know about the quitting.
I actually quit my job just last year. So I stayed on my job for an additional 3 years before I quit. So I became financially independent, and then I waited 3 more years, and then I quit.
Why though?
Why? Because I needed to make sure, I needed to solidify my portfolio. And it comes back, guys and ladies, it comes back to that bankability. Yes, I reached financial independence, but in our mindset, my husband and I said, okay, so we're going to keep working. How can we solidify that portfolio so when I make the transition? And it got to a point, and that was last year, where my husband and I, we sat down and we're like, okay, so it's getting to a point where I'm working and leading a team in engineering, but then also I have my portfolio, and I didn't have the bandwidth to do both successfully. Could I do both, in a mediocre way? Possibly. But I wanted to make sure that I focus on our future. So I left my W-2 job and I focused on what was going to bring us the life that we wanted.
And we just recorded another mini-sode. We're on to something with our mini-sode topics, but about stabilization. So when you talk about solidifying your portfolio, walk us through what you mean by that, and how did you do that?
Yes. So that pretty much means we had acquired all those units, but we needed to make sure that we had all the CapEx taken care of. So we want to go ahead and increase those funds for CapEx. Make sure that, hey, if a property needs a new roof or it needs a new water heater, let's go ahead and take care of those CapEx items now in order to ease the transition into real estate. Because what happens if you go and then suddenly you have like 20 leaks on the roof because you decided not to change those roofs? So we decided to go each property and decide, okay, so what do we need to do for maintenance? What do we need to do for CapEx? In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that we had market rent on all of our portfolio. And that required that if a tenant left, we needed to do renovations in order to increase that. Renovation takes money as well. So we wanted to stabilize that. And lastly, before I left, I wanted to make sure that I had to maximize my bankability with the banks, just in case. I wanted to make sure that was taken care of in case we wanted to buy more properties. So that was kind of like the transition of events.
I love that. I want to just make a note for those listening that aren't familiar with CapEx, like the lingo in multifamily. Mm-hmm. It stands for capital expenditures. So if you think of your monthly expenses as electric, what have you, that's not what we're talking about. This is one-time costs that are going to improve the building, that are, that has more zeros, right?
Yes.
HVAC, right? Windows, right? Replacing all the windows. You think that's a CapEx, especially on a multifamily with 34 units or what have you. That's an incredible cost. So I just want to make mention of that. In terms of the bankability, what was your relationship like with the banks? What were the conversations? What type of meetings did you have? Because that had to be a conversation, right? Because what's bankable to certain banks or what looks good to certain banks could vary, especially now with the changing landscape, right? With interest rates and just how more conservative certain banks are. So what were those conversations and when did you have them? And I'm sure you had them strategically, knowing, hearing you and hearing what you do, you sound like a very strategic person. So I'm curious about that because the women listening can pick up on that now as they prepare. You didn't do that after, you did that before, I'm sure. So I'm curious to hear what you did and how you positioned yourself to ensure bankability.
And I would say that it was like multiple conversations. And that's something else. If someone is actually looking to leave their W-2 job, I would highly recommend before anyone pulls the plug on your W-2, start talking to lenders, start talking to banks and find out what they're looking for. Like what happens when you quit your job? What do they want from your company? What do they expect from your company? So I would say about 2 years before our timeline of me quitting my job, I decided to establish those relationships. And I was like talking to local banks, going in person, talking to credit unions. And then I was talking, hey, if I wanted to get a commercial loan, what are your requirements? And they told me, well, you need to do an LLC. You need to have 2 years worth of tax returns. So then I kind of started thinking about that. Okay, so if I quit my job, maybe I can leverage my company now. And they say that I need to do 2 years of tax returns. So let me start working on that. Let me start establishing that history with my company. And it's not just one conversation. If you go talk to someone, keep up with them every month, send them an email. Hey, hey, Liz, we had a discussion last month. How's everything going? How are interest rates, our markets? And pay them a visit every 2 months. Go to their office. Hey, Liz, this is Ingrid. Remember me. Bring them donuts. Make sure you talk to them. And that's how it started pretty much. It's like me establishing that relationship. And as it grew closer for that date, they kind of knew my goals. They knew that I wanted to invest in real estate. They knew who I was. They would recognize me in the bank. Yeah. So when I quit my job, I already had kind of like a path of what to do with my company. Yeah. I didn't have my W-2 job, of course, but I had my company.
And you were a known entity. You were a known entity.
Yes, I was a known entity. Yes.
Yeah. I think that they were also quitting with you, right? Because as you were with that path with them. So it was not a surprise to them. They already knew all along. I think other things that I'm curious to see, what were your thought process? The benefits from being part of a company, right? 401k, other dental, and you go on and on about all the benefits that you get, insurance. How did you deal with all of that? Especially like insurance. A lot of people, we get that question a lot on our Facebook group. What our self-employed folks are doing about insurance? Is that something that you also took in consideration?
Yes. And that's something that I didn't know beforehand, but my discussions with other individuals that had quit their job, they would tell me, oh gosh, I should have looked into insurance. So before I quit my job, I did started looking into agents, and they provided me quotes with insurance and stuff, and like independent insurance agents. So they would give me quotes. So that was something on the budget that I needed to consider. So it's one of those things, is like, you may be really tempted to just quit your job. And you can. You can go ahead and quit your job. But once you have it taken into consideration insurance and your bankability afterwards with a company or LLC, the transition becomes smoother. Because if you quit now, and I've had conversations with individuals that they just quit and they're happy, and I'm happy for them. But then the next week, they're like, nobody's going to give me a loan. And then I didn't know insurance was this much money. But when you start to plan it ahead of time, you're going to see this a smoother transition. So we did consider insurance. We got quotes from insurance before I quit, and we made sure that was part of our budget before we quit, or I quit.
I think that's so unique that you did that at the age that you did it.
Yeah.
That, it kind of goes against the
it's the immigrants.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Jersey folks. It's immigrants. We're old.
Planners.
We're planners. We're freaking old. We're old folks. We'll eat dirt first, and then we'll party later.
Yes. No, and actually, yes. It's like, I remember, like I was telling you ladies, I would see my friends at the lake or traveling, and we were hustling, going to school and working longer hours, and even doing our own renovations. We would go and drive and do our own renovations. But we had that mentality of like, this is not going to last forever. This is going to get us where we want. And we're at a point where we can go travel, we can go have fun. And we see those people that are hustling. Yes, they have a really nice car, a really nice house, but we have financial freedom and that peace of mind. So for us, it was worth it. And it requires sacrifice. And I think when I see new investors, they want to get rich so quickly because of what they see in social media, that they want to do 2 months or a month or a year. And for us, it took years of planning and hustling and hard work.
Yeah. I forget who said it, but they said the overnight successes take 10 years.
Yes.
There's no overnight success. Right? And it's really true. And you're a great testament of that. Not just the strategicness of what you did when you did it and how you did it was all part of a plan. And I think there's so much that everyone listening can take from you, and excited to see what happens next with your journey. Where can all the ladies listening learn more about you, Ingrid?
I'm pretty active on Instagram. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is at engineer.onfire, engineer on fire. So you guys can, the ladies can follow me on Instagram.
Awesome. All this information you can find on our show notes. Now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. And the first one, Ingrid, is what's the most transformational book you ever read?
I would have to say a book by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, which was Who, Not How. So I feel like as an immigrant, I wanted to do everything myself. I wanted to take care of everything. But I realized that if I wanted to scale and to grow, I had to stop thinking of how I can do it and start thinking of who else can help me get to where I want to get.
Awesome. The second question is, what's the most powerful routine that you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
Be active. So when I wake up, I used to be a big runner. I'm actually 8.5 months pregnant now, so I don't run anymore. But
nice. Congrats.
Thank you. So, but I walk. I'm walking. So waking up, drinking a glass of water, and just being active for 30 minutes. And what I do, I listen to a podcast or I listen to a book for 15 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes when I'm walking, I just analyze it and dissect it, how I can use those lessons in my life and my business.
And last question, which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
My mom. When I remember, and I didn't understand this when I was little, but when we were little, my mom used to tell my sisters and I, she used to be like, you are the only one that decides where you want to go and who you want to be. Like nobody else decides that. So that has to come from within. And I didn't understand. And I mean, she used to say it all the time. But as an adult, I'm like, you're right. Like I decide if I want to be successful. I decide if I want to be a victim and blame other people for my failures. So my mom has been a great inspiration.
And she just inspired everyone listening to this as well. So
Yes.
Ingrid, thank you so much for being on our show. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with all of us. Excited to see what happens next for you.
Thank you, Liz. And thank you, Andresa, for having me.
Thank you.